So we've gone from not talking about death and dying to having weddings in hospitals before somebody dies, to this picture, the first time I saw it got to me. This, the young man that is on the table was an organ donor. This is in Japan, and this is his, see, it still gets to me. It's his medical team. When I first started, I worked as a child life specialist at a children's hospital in Houston. Child life specialists help children and families cope and adjust to hospitalization and illness. So the first week I was there, I was in the ICU, and my mentor took me around. I followed her around, and there was a little boy, a year old, who had fallen into a bucket of water. He had drowned. They brought him back. He was intubated in the intensive care unit. It's a level 1 trauma facility. The staff encouraged his mama to go home and take care of the other 4 kids. And pretty soon after the mama left, the little boy coded. How many times have you heard that story? Somebody walks out of the room and then they go. Babies do it, old people do it, mamas do it. They just do. Sometimes they need for that person to leave so they can take care of their business. So this little boy did that. The hospital team came swooshing in, as they do, and they did their beautiful work as best they could, and the boy died. The staff was upset. This was a, they do their best to save people, and when they can't, it's very difficult. There were gloves thrown on the floor, and there were pieces of tubing around, and my mentor walked over to the side of the bed. Everybody had left, and I was at the door. I didn't know what to do or what we were going to do, and she walked over to the bed, and tall bed. They'd taken the tube, he's got a little tube sticking out of his mouth, and she put her hand on his heart, and he was just a little guy. And she motioned for me to come around to the other side of the bed, and I did the same. And she said, sometimes they forget. We have to honor them. We have to honor him. I was 21. That was a pretty big life lesson at 21. I've never forgotten that, and I have carried it with me in my work. I think maybe that's why that picture of the Japanese guys got to me so much, because it's, the veil is very thin there. It's very powerful. So we've gone from, not talking about it. We used to have funerals in the home. We used to have the bodies in the home. Anybody ever been to a funeral been to a viewing where the body's in the home? Yes, look at all of you, fabulous.
That's in India.
In India, tell us.
My dad died, he died at about 3 o'clock, and the funeral was slated to be the next day at 12. So, and what they did was bring the body and, clothe them and all the rest of it. And this was the first time I'd ever, experienced.
How old were you?
This is as recent as I flew from here.
Yes. So, this is as an adult.
As an adult.
Yes.
And that was really the first funeral I had experienced at home.
Yes.
I mean, I'm used to the ones you go to the funeral homes here, but that kind was the first
different.
One, my own father.
Yes.
And for the whole night, and people came and they sang and biblical, everything. And then this was this big box of ice, because you have to keep
them cool.
Body cool.
Yes.
And it was my mom, my aunt, and myself. So we 3 took turns to kind of watch the body.
Mm-hmm.
And at one time when I was really sleeping, watching the body was for me sleeping, because I was,
Yes.
But that was an unusual experience.
Indeed.
And then the next day, the usual service. We don't take the body to the church. From the home, it goes to the grave.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Mine was here in a small town. It was actually my brother.
Yes.
Way back. My age is something, but way back. And it was at my grandmother's. And it was just, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it because they take the casket inside. There's like 3 rooms, you know, and everybody just congregates. And I remember my mother was there. It was some, and she just, they kept giving her, you know, I guess that passed, whatever it is to her. But it was just very, and then they walk to the graveyard, graves out. They walk, they don't, it's a procession, they walk over there, so it's, forget that. Very, it's like vivid.
It's right there for you. When I first started with the Bereavement Center in '97, there was a woman who was on our board of directors whose husband died, and she wanted him to come home, and the family just had a cow. I couldn't believe Mama wanted to do that, and she was one of those people that you really couldn't say no to. So she bought the top of the line blue casket from Porter Loring and had them bring her husband home, and I got to work with all the grandchildren in the living room. She asked for the casket to be brought in and put behind the couch, and opened it up, and she stood and looked at him for a long time and cried a little bit, and then the kids started to come in. The parents were freaked out. The kids were fine. The kids wanted to go over and look and see and touch and see what was happening, and some of the parents, don't touch, and you know, his makeup was kind of messed up. They were touching his hands and touching his face, and they wanted to know what was happening. So it ended up being a huge event. There were probably 100 people in and out of that house all day. And at the end of the evening, the woman asked, she said, I think I'm ready to watch a little TV. Okay. And she asked somebody to close the lid on the casket because it was time for her husband to rest. And she sat and watched TV and patted that casket. Yeah, sweet, sweet, sweet. And the next day he was there. And then they took him away and took him to the church and did their thing. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So many people don't know you can do that. You can take bodies home. If there is a stillbirth, you can take that little body home. You can take it home for a couple days. I know people that have taken their babies home and dressed them and loved on them and said goodbye to them. You can do that. And I'm telling you that because I never know who you're going to meet and be able to have conversations with, and it's important. People say goodbye in different ways, and it's okay to do it that way. This death, you have to say midwifery, because it's from England. Midwifery. This is a new thing, spring and summer 2014. Conscious dying. How you are with a person who's dying, what you talk about with them, what you do afterwards. Do you want to take them home? What do you want to do? There are people you can call if you want to take somebody home, and they will walk you through all of the steps. You have them in a room that's cool. You have them in a room with an air conditioning, and you have to keep the temperature at a particular coolness level. Flowers around. Typically when folks do that, they don't want their person embalmed. So the person just goes as they are. Rigor mortis sets in. The people educate about what they're going to see. People sit vigil and stay with the person just like they used to do 17th, 18th, 19th century. And there's power there. There's meaning there. There's energy there. And people can say goodbye in really beautiful ways. So I love how far we've come. We have living rooms in our homes. Anybody know why we have living rooms in our homes? There's a little death trivia for you to have at your next party. There was an editor for the Ladies' Home Journal named Edward Bach. Again, this is part of our legacy, our history. And Mr. Bach, story goes, said there was too much dying and happening in homes and there needed to be more living. So this was in 1910-ish. There had been a plague. Many, many people had died. Very often families brought their person home. Often there were many family members that died, and there are accounts of people, they said, stacked up in parlors. Mama died and then the baby died, and they stayed there until they could figure out what they needed to do. Thousands and thousands of people died. And the story goes, he said there's too much dying happening in homes, there needs to be more living. And he changed, they had these little architecture drawings in the Ladies' Home Journal about how we, part of the culture and how we build our houses. He changed that word parlor to living room. And it became part of the culture from then on. There's your trivia for your next party. No, you thought this was going to be boring, didn't you? Now you have trivia. So from the homes, the death and dying conscious movement, and the midwifery, there are all kinds of ways you can bury your people now and things that you can do with them. It's not just go to the church or cremate them and put them on your property or whatever it is you want to do. In San Antonio, Church of Reconciliation, you can put your ashes out on a little center area. They have it at that place. And the kids play out there, and people go and have picnics out there, and it's kind of a neat thing. So this one on the left, this tiger, that is a casket. That is a casket from one of the West Africa countries, and you can pay to get any kind of animal made. They're pretty fabulous caskets. You can have this beautiful rose casket. Can't really see that, but the roses on the top and roses on the bottom. You can get your favorite football team. You can get caskets that are blank and you have a bunch of markers and people can write messages on the casket. I've seen that for high school kids who've died, and the football team comes in and draws all over it. You can get a diamond made. I know, who knew? Get a diamond, you never know what people are wearing now. You can have ashes put in wind chimes, which are lovely. At Porter Loring, they've got little areas you can go and learn about all these good things. And then there are green funerals. So that funeral I was telling you about, I know of a woman in North Carolina. The daughter died. She was 22. They brought her out in the ambulance brought her out, and they set up in a little room and got an air conditioner, and the family sat with the body for 3 days, and green funeral, and then we're able to bury her out there. Burial laws are different for different states. That's a whole other story. We won't go there. But green funerals, those are cement pieces that are dropped down and then stuff grows on them. And in those little holes, you put ashes of your person and they put a little plaque on there. So if you're a scuba diver, you can put your person's ashes down there and then go visit them. We have one of these off of Corpus Christi. And there's one off Florida, there's one off Louisiana. Yeah, see that guy scuba diving right there, taking pictures. And then this guy, you can take your ashes, there's biodegradable things you put the ashes in and drop them over the edge and let the sea absorb them. And if you really, really, really want to know more about death and dying in our country, you can go right down there to Houston, Texas, to the National Funeral Home Museum. My mother and I took a mother-daughter trip there. It was very exciting. I didn't think we were going to be there very long. We were there all morning. It is fascinating. They've got carriages and Civil War memorabilia. They talk about how cameras came to be because the Civil War guys would die and families wanted to have pictures. Embalming came about because of the Civil War. There's a big piece about the floods in the hurricane that came to Galveston and how that affected the folks there and the people who died. And it's an interesting thing. And their motto is, any day above ground is a good one. You can get a koozie that says that and give it to your friends for Christmas. Not that it is out on one of the interstates on the side of the road. I can see it clearly, but yeah, and it's a $10 fee to get in. It's really interesting. Yeah, check it out. Yeah, I got koozies for people at Christmas one year that said any day is above ground is a good day. Let's talk a little bit about Raymond Moody. Anybody know Raymond Moody? 1972, he was about to enter medical school, and he had done a number of case studies on people who had a phenomenon where they seemed to leave their body and die for a little while and come back. He was encouraged not to talk about it because he would not get into medical school. And he said, I don't believe it. And he did. And he said in the first 2 weeks of medical school, he had no less than 8 invitations to go to physicians' homes or their offices to talk about his case studies. And those physicians began to tell their own stories. And other people began to tell him stories. So as a medical student, 26 years old, he wrote a book called Life After Loss. That book became an international bestseller, and his life work became talking to people about near-death experiences. He got a lot of crap from people just like Kubler-Ross did because he was on the cutting edge. And it wasn't true. It was brain disease. It was anoxia. There wasn't enough air. It was old emotions coming back. There are all kinds of rationale for these. And he said, no, there's something else going on. There's something else going on. Research continued all over the world. Same story. There's a tunnel. There's sounds people don't recognize. There's a life review that is little and big sometimes. There are beings that show up. There are family members that show up, and on it goes. He came up with 22 different pieces of this. And not everybody had every piece, but these all happened. There's not any evidence to support lack of oxygen or drugs or electrolyte balances or whatever there are now, whatever he said, whatever the other people say there are. Dr. Moody knew Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and they connected, and that's an important part of the story too.